with that being said, we're going to dive into this interview. The first question, too, is before we dive into real estate, I want to know a little bit more about Jason Lewis as a person.
Okay. So, hi, I'm Jason. Let's see, unique things about me. My wife and I had 5 kids in 5 years, and then took a 6-year break and are working on number 6. So that was intense. That's not advice. That's just something about me. I don't know. I feel like I think the next question we kind of get into the story a little bit too, right? I may kind of work some of those things into where I came from, where I'm going from here, if that works.
Of course. Yeah, there's no rules up here, I promise. So, okay, so we're going to jump right into the next question. Let's see if I can read that. What led you to getting into real estate in the first place?
All right, so this part is pretty, I think, common to a lot of people. So I was raised super middle class in Pleasant View. I didn't even know an entrepreneur. If you were to ask me, hey, what's the most a person could possibly make in the world? I'd have said whatever an anesthesiologist makes, because that's the most money you could make. So that was me through high school. Went on a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Came back, and then when I got back was 2008. So it was November 2008. I started my real world experience at the very, very bottom where everything was falling apart. So at that point, safety was the name of the game. So everybody told me, go to school, get a job, pick something super safe. And I was like, well, I like helping people and I like old people, and cancer is the safest thing in the world. So I picked radiation therapy. My thing is once I start something, I had lots of cousins and people that had been working on their bachelor's for 12 years. They'd changed majors every couple of years along the way, and at this point they're 45 and they're almost there to their bachelor's. And I was like, I'm not going to be that person. I'm going to pick it and I'm going to see it through. So picked my thing, saw it through, and hated all of it. I hated my classes, I hated my clinicals. I was not born to do healthcare. I was born to be business owner, entrepreneur, marketing, real estate, but it was risky. And so, from where I grew up, I didn't necessarily have a correct understanding of risk. So luckily, I lived in Ogden, and I got assigned clinical sites for X-ray up in Logan, and then clinical sites down here at Utah Cancer Specialists for cancer screening. So along the way, I started listening to self-improvement things, the gamut, the Darren Hardy, Robert Kiyosaki, Tony Robbins, all of them. So everywhere, if I was cutting the lawn, I was listening to stuff, and it started to eventually change who I was, my mindset along the way going through college. So my goal eventually became, I want to be a radiation therapist at whatever spot is, and Rich Dad Poor Dad played a particularly big role in my life of I played cash flow, and it was I am going to beat cash flow in real life. And that's all I need. I'm going to get out of the rat race, and I'm going to be in the fast track, and that's what I want to do and pursue. So my goal was to get a job in radiation therapy that had the fewest number of clients so that I could focus on doing real estate investing all day in between work hours. So, but my understanding of risk kind of changed as I was getting closer to graduating and starting to look for jobs and things like that. I realized that the radiation therapy market's pretty tight in Utah. There's 30 in the state radiation therapists, and so it's well, shoot, if I lose a job, I gotta hope that I get one of the other 30 potential other slots. And if I don't like this, and here's the other thing, in radiation therapy, if you do a mistreat, if you're an inch off on someone in radiation, you make the news and you're done. That's the end. And I was I picked this for less risk. I'm not sure that I had the right understanding of risk. So basically, I decided while looking for a job in radiation therapy, and I had gotten one that was an on-call job. I was I think I did this wrong. And at that point, we had just barely had our first child, and I announced to my wife, hey, good news. I know we just did this for 4 years, but like, that's in the past now. I'm going to go be a real estate investor. So that's kind of that's how I got into it.
I love it. Okay, raise your hand if Bigger Pockets or Rich Dad Poor Dad had something to do with your journey into real estate. That's absolutely wild to me. The more and more we talk about this, because that was my exact path. Like Rich Dad Poor Dad, Bigger Pockets. Then I'm like, this is exciting. I'm jumping all in.
Yeah.
So you went all 4 years thinking you're going to be a
radiation therapist.
Radiation
It's literally
therapist.
the person, like if you're getting radiation, that's the one like laying you on the table, lining up the little I hope you never learn about this.
Yeah.
Lining up the little tattoos, that's radiation therapist.
Okay. So how old were you when you decided like you're going full time into real estate? You had a kid, obviously.
Yep. So got back from mission 19, 3 years to bachelor's would be 22. So this is like 23.
Awesome.
So I was on a full Utah time frame.
There we go.
Like
Yeah.
I graduated, I'd had my first kid, I was married. Like
Yeah.
we did it just right. Back from the mission.
And I had to bring that up because most people don't realize the Utah time frame, at least where I'm from.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Okay.
I was like 2 years before too old to get married. I squeaked it in.
Exactly. Okay, the next question. Tell us about your operation. What do your businesses do exactly?
Actually, let's go back to the last one because I want to bring it up to speed to today. So
Okay,
now how I actually got into it. So this was going to be 2012. So, when you look at 2008 is when stuff started to go down. But it went down until 2012. So when I decided, hey, I'm going to get into real estate was like the bottom. There weren't a lot of real estate investors out there. And again, I still didn't have a good relationship with risk, entrepreneurship, et cetera. So I was like, I'm going to go find a real estate investor and work for one. So instead of figuring out and starting it, I'm going to work for someone else who is a real estate investor. So I found one finally that was a real estate investor and hit him up for a job. And he said, no, pass. Like, I'm good. I don't need your help. So I hit him up a second time. He said, pass again. Hit him up a third time. It was not the charm. He also said, pass. So then on the fourth time, I said, tell you what, I'm just going to show up tomorrow and provide value wherever I can. And I'm just going to keep showing up and providing as much value as I can until I'm worth something. And then at that point, will you just pay me that? And he's like, well, I guess I can't really say no to that. So that was how it started. So I worked for free for him for a month. So a lot of the credit of my journey goes to my wife, who, when I said, hey, I know we just had a kid, but I'm going to go work for free. And he said he'll pay me something someday if I'm worth it. It was like, sure, I'll support you in that. So worked for him so we started working from the same desk in Bountiful, flipping one home a month, basically. So pretty small operation. We scaled that all the way up to 150 to 200 houses a year, massive rental portfolio, big commercial deals and everything else. And along the way, I did basically everything but construction in those 5 years. So ran sales, ran marketing, ran the operations, did all of it. Then, so stayed there for 5 years, and then at that point, that's when I started the Utah company.
Perfect. So what, if you could point that to one thing, what did you do differently that helped him scale?
I would say, actually, funny enough, he and I went to lunch today. I would point it to, he and I had the perfect visionary implementer relationship. You go back to your rocket fuel, traction, Gino Wickman books. He had a lot of great ideas. He and I meshed well to be able to implement and see those ideas through. And with that right relationship, we were able to do awesome stuff.
I love it. And I'll note our previous conversation briefly. I've always been one that thought you had to partner up with someone to achieve that integrator visionary combo. But in that case, and what you were telling me before, you don't always have to partner if you can pay someone to be that version. I
own another company that we won't talk much about, but I just hired a COO at that company who had just been a COO for $1 billion fund, Before that was lead of marketing at like Dickies Pants when they sold for 900 million. Like, you can go buy some pretty crazy talent with money you don't have to partner.
I love it. Okay, are we good to go to the next question?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, tell us about your operation. What do your businesses do exactly? Because keep in mind, Jason, and what I'm finding more and more out is that he is not just a wholesaler. So we're gonna hear a little bit more about what Jason does.
All right, so I'll get the other one out of the way quick. I own a company called Investor Machine. It does high-level list and marketing for big investors nationwide. So the Utah company. So we have an acquisition side and a disposition side. So, and included in the room, I'm gonna have them stand up, Porter and Mike. They are rock star acquisition managers. Sales guys, these are the people that are actually meeting with the sellers and figuring out what the very best win-win situation is for them. Been with me for years, as good a guys as they come. We just barely hired Julia as well for a third one, but she's not here today. Thanks, guys. So we spend a lot of money in marketing to generate a whole bunch of direct-to-seller leads, as well as we do a bunch of networking. So from the networking side, we've got Dan, Austin, and Jaden here. Where's Jaden? Oh, there's Jaden. So these guys are, so Austin and Jaden are relationship managers. Their whole purpose is just to help people be successful in, like, essentially bringing us deals for us to be able to either buy, or then the other part is connecting on dispositions. So anybody who's looking for a flip, these are your guys. We do between 100 and 150 properties every year. We may do as high as 200 this year. So there's gonna be 200 opportunities to buy through one of these guys. When you go to the walkthrough, that's where you'll meet Dan. He's the guy that you'll meet at houses, walk everything through with you and everything else. So Jaden and Austin are on both sides. So if you have any type of seller situation, something where it's like, hey, this might make sense in the investment world, they're the ones that can walk you through it, talk through, say, hey, yep, we'll do this deal, won't do this deal. And then on the flip side, they're the ones saying, hey, if you're looking for a deal, this will do it. It's literally just networking with everyone like who's in this room to help you guys meet your goals. And we've got enough tools under our belt that we can wind up helping almost anybody reach their goals. So obviously we spend a lot of money on marketing, we do a lot of networking. Our whole specialty is just the distressed seller. So back when I was at my last company, we were selling hundreds of homes a year. I made it as high as the third ranked realtor in Utah for transaction count. So I've done a lot of traditional real estate transactions, and in the last 3 years, I helped my sister buy a house just because she found the house and said, hey, will you represent me? I said, sure, and I'll give you the commission. Like, that's the extent of my personal, like, buyer's agent, seller's agent stuff at this point. Like, our whole world, our feeling is like we love this niche of the seller who values convenience more than price, someone who, may be in a really difficult situation, but like the longer I've done this, the more I've learned, like, the ideal seller that all of you guys are looking for, because you're in this room, and that we specifically specialize in, they're called motivated sellers oftenly, that was a good one. We're making up new words up here. Often they're called motivated sellers. I think that's the wrong term. I would call them convenience-seeking sellers. We have done deals with attorneys, other investors, realtors, mayors, accountants, like people that know exactly what's going on and that still choose to work with us. It's the same person that's showing up at a Starbucks to buy a cup of coffee that they could make at home for a tenth the price. It's just convenience in housing. The advantage to convenience in housing is it has a lot of zeros next to it, so you can make a lot of money by providing that convenience at a high level. But really, what we do as investors is just providing convenience in housing at a really high level. And then on the back end, how we disposition, we flip. We do a lot of wholesales and assignments. We'll buy some and put them on the MLS. We do Airbnbs, rentals. We do seller finance, subject to properties, all of it. Did I miss anything?
That's perfect. Awesome. And okay, so how we do this, I'm going to ask Jason a few questions. Usually I say this at the beginning, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions that come to your mind. If we can hold those to the end, then that would be awesome. We'll do a few questions then. And then Jason mentioned he would stay here for a little bit, and so if there's more questions after that, then maybe you can catch Jason, but there's probably going to be a list or a line of 5 or 6 people, but good luck on that.
Here's one of my event hacks. So one of the masterminds that I'm in, we have awesome speakers come in, like Benjamin Hardy, Darren Hardy, like the people that have written like best-selling books. There's the one I'm going to in March has the guy that wrote like the Bible on working with COOs. The secret to an event like this, the speaker is walking around doing nothing before they speak. After they speak, they've got a lineup of 30 people. So I always come to the event with a list of like 5 questions. What do I specifically want to know? I always make sure I'm to the speaking event early, and I always catch them in advance and quiz them. As long as I can while I get them, because after, it's always game over.
I love it. Thank you, Jason. Okay, so the next question we got for you. With all the ways to make money in real estate, what made you choose wholesaling?
So this is a pretty good lead-in from what we were just barely talking about. So it's a couple of things. One, I love helping that specific seller. And I feel like wholesaling in general, like if you were to group wholesaling into a business category, most people would group wholesaling in with used car salesman, ambulance chasing attorney, just like the bottom of the bucket. And I like the idea of being the good guys in the bad guy industry. Going in and saying, hey, this is a person that's prime for being taken advantage of, and we're going to go in and we're going to take really good care of them, give them a really high level of service. I also love the business building the way to build the business. For example, if you become a really high producing realtor, in most cases, it's still your name. People still want to work with you, right? Like you're like a Spring Benson mega agent, right? In the end, the people from your sphere, your network, they still want to work with you because you're the person, right? If you were to quiz our last 100 sellers, I mean, between Mike and Porter, how many of them know my name? None, right? That's what I love. I want to be able to serve people through a system that I've been able to be a part of, putting together awesome people, and none of them even know my name.
I love that. And I'll say too, on the other side of that, I think the investor community is a lot smaller than people realize. And the reputation that one holds in the investor community, word travels fast. And you've obviously held your reputation. So I'll say that even though your clients might not know your name, people in the investor world definitely know your name, and you've held that reputation. So if you could speak, I guess you kind of answered that, being the good guy in a bad industry. Is that how you felt like you've kept that reputation?
Yeah, I mean, so I feel like I had a unique advantage working at someone else's company. Basically, I was working at someone else's company for the first 5 years, playing with money that wasn't my own. But he treated me like the company owner in a lot of ways. Like he'd go on a 2-3 week trip and I would run the company along the way, but it wasn't with my own money. And so I feel like because of that, I kind of grew in a way of like, go out and do good things and cool things with cool people, and the money comes along the way. So like, I just got in that habit and kind of got to prove out like, hey, you don't have to be greedy, you don't have to squeeze every dollar, you don't have to everything, just go provide a lot of value and do cool things with cool people. And the money comes in really big ways when you do that, and I've just kind of continued that across the companies.
Perfect. I love it. Okay, let's hand over to the next question here. Ooh, I like this one. Wholesaling has a reputation for being a slimy industry. What are your thoughts on this? And you've hit at it a little bit, but if you have any thoughts that you'd like to expound, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, wholesaling has this reputation for a good reason. Like, if you think about it, you get, there's some communities that I'm in, because I'm pretty deep in the investor space, and I'll see these like chats come up in the community, right? It's like this 19-year-old kid from the hood that's like, hey, I just locked up this seller and this place, and now they're trying to back out. You know, how do I file a memorandum of contract? How do I file a notice of interest? I'm going to take these people's house and everything else. Like, it has a very, very low barrier to entry. You don't have to be licensed. You don't have to pass any type of certification. You don't have to be ethical. Literally, you can just drive around and look at a house that needs to be fixed up, skip trace it, find the phone number, text the seller, and if you've got enough sales skill, you can convince them to jump in on the biggest investment of their life, and you may have no idea what you're doing. It gets worse once you start moving into seller finance and subject to, right? You convince those people to deed the house into your name, keep the mortgage in their name. I know of one specific guy in the Southeast. He's like 21, and he's got like 40 of these, and no actual cash in the bank, right? Like, he's renting all these out, which is just barely covering the mortgage, no actual net worth. Like, the first hiccup, all of these people are going to wind up having their credit ruined, foreclosure. It's going to be nasty. So, I think it's, because of the low barrier to entry, it can be easy to get into. So yeah, I mean, it's justified. Like, used car salesmen are justified in coming across as a slimy industry. Like, it's easy to take advantage of people in this industry, so you have to rely on people's, ethics and morals, essentially, to go and do and be better.
100%. And something I'll note on that as well, being an agent right now that is an investor, right? Like, I've been an agent for the past 5 or 6 years, and I decided to get my license, I decided to become a realtor a year ago. So my background is in the investor world, working direct to seller, working with in the wholesale industry, value add. The amount of agents that I have approached me wanting to wholesale, wanting to make the extra money that a wholesaler would, it's like, I get that question asked several times a day. And on Jason's point, there's a lot of ways you can mess up in this world, especially in the creative finance world. Mm-hmm. And you are playing with people's biggest investment, you're playing with their credit and their lives. So what I would recommend, if you are trying to learn, this is not a plug for myself. I don't care if you use Jason. If there's another investor that you can partner up with and JV with, that will be much, much more valuable to you, learning that side of things while not ruining someone else's life. So that's what I'll say, is there's a lot of layers to this, especially creative finance. So keep that in mind.
I 100% agree and believe that too. One of my goals in the future is to get into the bigger multifamily apartment space. And my 100% intention is, when I find my first deal, I already know the people that I'm going to go partner with and run through that first deal with. And I know that they're going to make money on a deal that I found at the start, and it's going to be one of the best decisions that I've ever made. So let's stay a minute on being licensed and wholesaling. So a couple of things. Number one, there are two worlds. There's the agency world and there's the wholesaling world. These worlds do not cross. Unless you want to get into trouble, if you have signed a buyer broker or an exclusive right to sell agreement, you cannot also be the wholesaler. Now, that's not to say you can have one of those agreements signed and wind up bringing a deal to a wholesaler and working with them in that way. There's nothing wrong with that. But at the point that you say, hey, I'm signing an agreement saying I'm representing your best interests, then you go and say, I'm going to get it under contract for as little as I can to represent my best interest, to go and find someone else that's going to buy it for the most to represent their best interest. At that point, you've crossed into the black. So that's rule number one with being an agent and wholesaling. There's nothing wrong with being an agent and wholesaling, but you have to have the proper disclosures and you have to make sure that agency stays out of it. For every single one, every person should sign an exclusive right to sell agreement, agreement that, or I mean, sorry, a for sale by owner agreement that makes it crystal clear. And in our presentations, look, I'm an agent, I'm not your agent. I'm just here representing me, my best interests. You're here representing you, and we're going to, have a negotiation. But you need to understand that, like, I'm here to get this property for as little as possible. I'm not here to represent your interests.
100%. And the amount of disclosures, people might not be aware of, as an agent, the red tape that you need to go into. So I'll say one thing, because I've gotten a fine because of this exact thing. Just because you have permission to assign a property does not mean you have permission to market a property.
I got fined for the same thing.
See, so
I've gotten fined more than once, by the way. If you're an agent and you do wholesaling at scale, there's a decent chance that you're gonna miss some paperwork things along the way. So if you're looking at me to say, hey, Jason's a person that's never had a run-in with a division and I trust him, I'm not the guy.
Exactly. So I had to tell my story. That sounds like Jason's, the same things happen. So
I forgot to include my brokerage info once on a wholesale email that we sent out. And if there's one thing you can count on from realtors, it's that if you make a mistake, they will turn you into a division.
They will narc 100%. And that's Facebook groups too, by the way. That's probably the main source of the narcs. Anyways, next question. How can someone who is looking to do their first or next flip leverage you to find their next property?
Okay, so we have the easiest way is we have a big list. So go to wholesalehomehub.com, right? Did I get that right, Austin? Yep. Wholesalehomehub.com. Just fill in your information, name, phone number. From there, you're going to get assigned to Austin, Jaden, or Baylor. So not only will you get emails regularly with all of our inventory, so we don't have like a special insider club list. We just send everything out to the group. In addition to that, you'll get a phone call from one of these three to understand, hey, what are your goals? What are you hoping to accomplish? An advantage to that is oftentimes maybe you'll miss one of our emails and you'll get a text from Jaden saying, hey, I know you were looking in Sugar House. This one's in Sugar House. Like, you're going to want to make sure you check this one out. That's one of all the wholesalers in Utah. That's one, I feel like one of our unique, strong advantages is we have these three that actually build a relationship with everyone on the list and try really hard to say, hey, this is what you're looking for, and they're going to help you try to find it. Now, the bad news is, like the MLS, like any other wholesaler, you are going to have to compete for the deal. So you're going to have to submit your highest and best offer. I've been on the other side. So for 5 years when I was at the other company, we were the flipper that was buying from wholesalers. So like, I know that it sucks to show up at a walkthrough, to submit an offer, to lose out, and everything else. But I will say the people that do it consistently wind up buying houses. Because, I mean, we had one, I'll just use the one I got under contract today. We sent out 2 houses in Salt Lake. One was a little bigger, the other was a little smaller. Everybody went to the bigger house. And the smaller house, nobody was interested in it. We had no offers, we weren't gonna move it. So I was like, well, that's stupid. I know this is a deal. I bought it, put my crew on it for 2 days. We turned around and listed it, and we got it under contract yesterday or today. We're gonna make 60 grand on it, right? Any one of you could have come in at 10,000 higher, and I probably would have just let you have it. But in this case, because we were gonna cancel on the deal, it's like, well, I guess, we're gonna buy it, do this work, etc. So like, there's definitely still deals to be had through our list, but then you're gonna go to one where it's like, dude, there was 30 people there, and I'm pretty sure they paid 100% of ARV. That was a total waste of my time. But the only way to go get a deal is work. Like, this is not, so it was totally different when I started. 2013, 2014, all you had to do to get a house to buy was go on to hudhomestore.com and just say, I'll pick that one. Or even like the MLS. Like, there was a point where like 3/4 of the houses on the MLS were short sales. Like that little yellow picture that you see on there, short sale, that was all that was on the MLS in Utah. But you go to HUD Home Store, you go to bank owns, you could just say, I want this one, and the numbers will make sense there. But on the flip side, we projected 4 months on the MLS for it to sell. We would in running our numbers, we would assume we're gonna list it in January and it'll finally sell by April, hopefully after a couple price drops. So we currently live in a market and have for quite a while that's the opposite. Deals are very hard to come by, it takes a lot of work, but the good news is when you get one, it's pretty quick and easy to sell. I mean, this house on 300 East, somebody today, I can't remember who, was reminding me, I think it might have been Dad, we did a crap job. Like, we just came in and threw flooring down and relisted it for somewhat of a deal, and it sold in like the first day or two. So however you choose to get a deal is gonna be a lot of work. You can't just show up and do one thing, but the good news is on the flip side, you're not gonna have to stress with hard money costs for 4 months. As much as we love Francisco and hard money costs, you're not gonna have to stress for 4 months. By the way, you talked about being selective with your sponsors. We are too. And because of that, so far, Francisco is our only sponsor because he's as good as it gets. We use him all the time. Like, I would give a very strong recommendation to Francisco.
There we go. And I've had so many recommendations for Francisco, so he's awesome. And my process was very smooth, so awesome. Okay, the next question. How can real estate agents and investors utilize your network to help make them more money? Usually these are a little bit more tilted this way, so my apologies on this.
No worries. So we talked about the dispo side. And again, the secret is just show up, make offers, do it consistently, some wind up your way. And this is, by the way, this is the same thing that we do with the MLS. This is the same thing that we do with our marketing. Like, we lose out all the time, you know. I'll spend 20 grand in marketing to get some leads that turns into some appointments, but a lot of it winds up wasted money. I've done marketing channels that I didn't get a single deal from. You know, we've reached out to lots of agents that didn't turn out to be anything. Like, there's just a lot of wasting time and consistent failure until you wind up getting to the one that's a success. So on the flip side, coming back to what you said before, our network. So we have I think our buyers list is 7,000, 8,000, and we consistently get 30% open rate on everything. So if we send out a property, immediately you've got 2,000 plus people that have looked at it that day. It's an incredible exposure. Plus, these guys specifically going and reaching out and saying, hey, you know, I know, getting the additional interest of people that maybe didn't check their email consistently. So how you can use us to help is if you have a property that, you know, you have a seller that's looking for convenience more than price, we're happy to help. So we have some relationships, other investors, agents in the space, things like that, where they literally just give us the lead. And then you've got two of the best in the space, Porter and Mike, that will go meet with the seller, negotiate with them, and get them under contract, and then we will dispo it. Some people get a property under contract first, and then they'll bring us the contract and say, hey, will you help me dispo this? We'll start at whatever point in the process you're comfortable with, which then gives you more time to go focus on getting the next deal.
I love it.
So, yeah.
Just help on the dispo side.
Yeah.
The JV.
Yeah, and we're happy to answer questions along the way. We've got an in-house person on our team that's amazing at running numbers to say, hey, this is roughly where we would be. Just make sure if you do get it under contract, your contract needs to include the verbiage for you to be able to market or assign the contract.
Both, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And so here's another one that, speaking of division fines, by the way, this one I knew the rule and I thought that we had done it right, but just the paperwork wasn't done quite right. If it is a listed property, you must also have the broker's permission to market the listing. So the seller has to agree to let it be assigned or marketed, and the broker, not the agent, has to send you an email saying, I give you permission to market my listing. So that's just if it's a listed on the MLS property.
Interesting. I did not know that. Thank
Yeah.
you for that, Jason.
It's
Okay.
the worst when you know it
Yeah.
and you still get fined for it because you did it wrong.
Okay, so if you were to start over today as a new wholesaler, what would you do, or what would you devote your time to getting your first contracts?
First few contracts?
Where would you, devote your time? And your first 3 contracts, sorry. Again, I'm trying to read from the side.
I would.
And before you dive in, one of the reasons I wanted to ask this question, as someone that's wholesaled before, I have tried several different ways to wholesale. I have tried the operations side where I'm spending $6 or $7 grand a month to try and produce contracts, and that's a whole lot different than a new investor where their time,
Right.
or capital, where would you devote your time?
Yeah. So I'm going to run under the assumption that we are a high time, low capital person. So I would do one of 2 things. I would pick one of these 2 strategies. One, I would go all in on agents, which is I would just start calling agents, calling people in my sphere, just saying, hey, this is what I do. This is the specific seller I'm looking to serve. If you have anybody that meets this, and then the offering that I would suggest you give, which is the same one that we give, is hey, you're an agent. We'll happily let you represent us, or if you want, I will represent me, you represent you, and we'll pay you a referral fee back, whatever you're the most comfortable with. And I would be on the MLS looking for houses. I would be networking with any agent that I know, trying to get my first couple of deals.
Perfect.
That would be strategy number 1. Strategy number 2, if that's not your jam, is let's say you're like, well, I'm not really like much of a networker, much of a salesperson, but I'm willing to hit the pavement. I would download the app Deal Machine, and I would start driving for dollars. I would drive up and down every neighborhood. I would look for any house that looks like it needs to be fixed up, pin all of them, and then you can either send those mailers, or you can skip trace them, text them, call them. If you have a higher risk tolerance for TCPA rules, that's what I would do.
Perfect.
I would pick one of those 2 strategies to start.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. I think this is our last question, and one that I ask for all of our experts that we bring. You are coming here as a very, very busy individual, very successful individual, and you're giving us your time for free. So what can the audience, we have 80 to 100 people here, I don't know how many we have. What can the audience do to help you on your journey right now?
I mean, I think it's just what we were talking about. Like, the reason we're all here, and I mean, it's not just me. You got Austin, Jaden, Dan, Porter, Mike. By the way, I asked nobody to come today. Like, I was just planning on being here. But these guys are all here specifically because we all want to serve you guys. That's what we're here for. And by the way, you were right. Like, the right way to get to me is definitely through the team. I absolutely love these guys, love this group. We've got an amazing team, amazing culture, and we're just here to help serve and would love to have the opportunity to do that. If you've got, and really, like, we have so many different ways and things that we can do. If you have a seller with motivation and equity, someone looking for convenience, just bounce it off us. Most likely, we're going to be able to, we do over 100 of these a year. That's a lot of specific experience and expertise that we can say, hey, in this unique area, this is what you should do. Maybe you should look at this opportunity. Maybe you should this. We were just talking Porter was just saying in a meeting earlier today, talking about something we were able to do to help a seller in St. George that we wouldn't have even been able to do for them 6 months ago, from stuff that we've really learned and implemented just at this point, this far along in our journey. So, you're looking to buy a house, talk to the guys on the team. You're looking to sell a house, talk to the guys on the team. And our whole motto is creating win-win solutions. So we're only interested in doing it if it winds up a massive win for you guys. In my early days of wholesaling, were terrible. There's nothing worse than, like, you're trying to find someone to buy your house. You finally get someone, and you're like, okay. And we actually just had an example of this. What was it, Lehigh? Lehigh, it was round 4. But so we had our first buyer say, I'm in. I commit 100%. I promise I'm in. Great. Then last minute, right before they put down the earnest money, bailed. Number 2, bailed. Number 3, bailed. Finally, number 4 did it. When that used to happen to me in my early days, it would rock my world. I'd have like only one buyer. I'd be hanging. I mean, I remember calling in a favor to a friend, begging them to buy it, and I made, you guys are gonna laugh. I made a deal with God that if I made anything, I'd give it to the church. I think I made like $1,000, and I donated it all immediately because I just wanted to take care of this seller, and she was going to be so mad if it didn't work out. And I had only one buyer in the end to put it together, and it was a nightmare in the early days. We made it to our 4th buyer in what? A day? 2 days? Like we had 4 buyers cancel on us, and we still had that property moved for still a plenty good amount in 2 days. Like that's what we've been able to do after continually getting better and better and better at this process. But I remember back when I was at my last company, we tried wholesaling a couple of times, and we were like, this is terrible. Like I would rather deal with the problems of flips and inspectors because like wholesaling is awful. But now that we're this far along the way, like it's awesome. So let us save you some of that specific headache and pain.
For sure. Okay, well, if everyone can give a round of applause to Jason. And we are still going to do a Q&A, so if you guys have some questions, again, we'll probably keep this to 3 or 4 questions, and then you guys can bug Jason afterwards. So, does anyone have?
Not just me afterwards, a few of us will stick around, and you can, again, like, I'm the guy that happens to be sitting up here, but you're going to get every bit as good of answers from Austin, Dan, Porter, Mike, Jaden, as you will from me.
Perfect.
How far back of ARV, real ARV? You actually try to buy, not when it's fixed, but.
That's fair, real ARV. By the way, I will confess, our ARVs are best case scenario. There, I said it. That said, we have comps to justify, but I will say, if any of you guys that have ever submitted an offer on our thing, one of the questions we ask you is, hey, what would you call ARV? And if there's one thing I've learned is that ARV, they say like beauty is in the eye of the beholder. ARV is in the eye of the beholder. We will have houses where we think it's worth 500. The highest person will be at 600, and the lowest person will be at like 250. Like ARV is wild. So trying to define real ARV is challenging. So you're saying, where do I personally like to buy off of what I legitimately think I'm going to sell it for? I like to be 65% of ARV. A better number to ask on that, though, is ARV minus repairs, because just ARV, if it's a massive fixer-upper, that's a very different number than if it's a light fixer-upper. But just like throwing it out super rough, where do I want to be based off of ARV based off of repairs is like 65, 66%. Would you? Yeah. These guys are the ones that are doing that more than me.
Perfect. Okay, and I'll come to you guys. So if you have a question, say your name, and then we'll direct it that way. Also, while we're asking these questions, I have Jason, what he was talking about with his buyers list. That's a direct link to it, Wholesale Hub or wholesalehomehub.com. Yep. So that QR code for Jason. For now.
We're this close to a massive rebrand. Be ready.
Okay, there we go. So that's where you can get signed up for now. And then that's my Instagram on the left where you can stay up to date for future events. We do these once a month, and there's new topics each month. Okay, who's got our second question right over here? Remember your name and then your question.
Rich, and curious, how many serious buyers are typically competing on a good deal that most people see the value in? So when I show up, I can know how many.
So I would say it varies massively. And it's going to have everything to do with, so if it's a Kearns, single level, 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,600 square foot that we've priced pretty aggressively, and it's about now, which is a pretty hot time of the market. Dan, on a house like that, how many buyers do you have show up?
Which property do you want to know exactly?
Want all of them.
So which one? Like
everybody
the
else.
one, the Kearns one that we were at, we had 5 offers, I think, the last time we saw it.
How many cash versus hard money?
That,
All hard money. 90%.
a lot hard money.
Not all hard money. There was one real cash.
So probably, I'd say that's about right. And then, but then we'll have houses that'll be like, we sold one to a realtor friend that was all the way up in, what was the Tremont one that Lewis bought? What was that town again? Plymouth. We'll get a deal in Plymouth or wherever we may only have one buyer, one offer, and every variation in between. Again, it's not consistent. We have some where, I mean, what's the most we've ever had at a walkthrough?
Like 25.
25, yeah. That's an anomaly on the high. And then the lowest we've ever had is we've sent it out and literally crickets. No one was interested, and you could have picked it up, went up for what we had it for. So somewhere between 0 and 25.
There we go. Okay, a couple more questions. Anyone on this side have a question? I thought I saw a hand at one point.
You got one right here.
Oh, there we go.
So,
I'll give you the mic.
so thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have like a way or a format that it need to be followed for the wholesaling? Because you said it has to have the assign or another word that I forgot what it was.
Market or assign.
Market or assign. So is there a format that we can follow or that it can be to say, hey, this is the right way?
Yep. In fact, if any of you guys want to hit up Austin or Jaden, we'll be happy to just give you our addendum that we use that our attorney helped us prepare that'll make sure you're covered on everything. So it's got like 8 different points in there to make sure you're really, really covered on everything. The bare minimum that we have to have is a sentence that says right to market and or assign, but we'll be happy to give you guys all of it if you'd like.
So we can just ask them?
Yep. And Jaden and Austin, stand up one more time just to be safe. These guys will be happy to get you that.
You guys are going to be busy with that one, huh? Okay, here's our last question.
I know that you said you'll do 100 to 200 wholesales this year. How many flips will you do this year? Is it rare? Like 10?
Yeah, I'm like 10 to 20.
Yeah, and then what's the criteria to, hey, I'm gonna flip this one rather than just wholesale it out?
That's a great question. So for me, part of it's timing. I run 2 or 3 construction crews. So it's nice. I have a deal machine that just keeps them going so I can pull one out when I'm ready. I'm up in Ogden, and my construction manager, who's my dad, is up in Ogden area too.
Okay.
So we like Box Elder, Weber, Northern Davis. And then the other thing is we like light remodels. Like I've been flipping now for 5 years and I haven't pulled a permit because I haven't needed to. I just come in and do the cosmetic stuff. Now that's not to say like if the roofer comes in, they'll redo the roof, or we just had a foundation fix. But like me personally need to pull one because we moved a wall or anything else, I just won't do it. Like our average remodel bid is like 15 grand. So that's what I personally choose to keep, because my most limited resource is construction manpower, because I just haven't chosen to really build that up. So I'm very careful with how I allocate construction manpower.
We won't tell the city you didn't pull permits.
I didn't need one.
Okay, there we go. I'm not that.
We learned that lesson at the last company. We tried, like in the early days at the last company, again, I wasn't in charge of construction, but we did a lot, and we wound up getting a name for ourselves. And I swear they would like watch the title, and as soon as it went into our name, it was already red tagged before we showed up there. So it's better to just play by the rules.
Yeah, I'm forced to do it on this one, and I've heard it's better to keep by the rules, so I guess that's the future. So
Yeah.
Okay, so another round of applause for Jason. So these events, like I said, we do these once a month. The Perry Group helps us out a ton with these, and I know you see their name everywhere because we're in the Perry Group's office. This is Beehive Investment Community that we're starting, where we do these, like I said, once every month. This is a Facebook community that we're trying to build.